All right. Thank you for joining us at another episode of our Busy Executives podcast. Today, I have a special guest. Chris, I don't know how long we've known each other. It feels like forever,
It has
in
been
a good
forever.
way, in a very good way. Chris Court, who is the Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer for Service First Credit Union, and I just love hearing you speak. So personally, I'm just kind of excited to get to jam with you for the next hour and talk about leadership, talk about some of the strategies, some of the things that you've put in place personally to help you grow, but obviously, the other areas too that you've really focused on that you get to speak to, right?
Yeah,
With the groups that you lead and just where you get to go with your business. So, Chris, thank you for joining us.
sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, can you help our listeners just kind of dive in just a little bit of your backgrounds, maybe what got you started in the credit union movement and specifically leading, and what brought you to where you are at today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll go back as far as you need me to, but I started in the restaurant industry way back when, and I became a manager in the restaurant industry, and that just, as time went on, takes a beating on some folks. So I decided to go back to school to get my master's, and while I was doing that, I came across someone who worked in the finance field, and his wife was just starting at a community bank, and they were kind of building up the community aspect of it. They had grocery store branches, they had in-store branches, mall branches, and of course the traditional brick and mortar branches. And she was looking for people-oriented folks, sales folks, to lead some of those branches. So that started me into banking, reaching out to her and getting the opportunity that she gave me with zero banking experience to start as a manager in some of those in-store branches from the sales side. So that led me into more of the brick and mortar branches as I went along. And eventually I started opening and closing branches as the environment and the economy focused on the brick and mortar rather than the in-store branches. So the thing that got me started, I ended up helping to close while we built no new brick and mortar
Wow.
branches.
Yeah.
At the same time, a very wise branch manager asked me where I was going in my life. And the reason being is opening and closing branches never gave you a home, right? You went to a branch to close it in the next to 9 months or so, and then you went to another branch consecutively to open it with some of those same folks. So there was
Mhm.
really never a team or a home or a family that you got while you were doing that. So he asked me if I had ever looked at credit unions because a local credit union was looking for a manager of one of their offices, and it was very close to where I lived. So I looked at it, and that led me down this journey of starting at the credit union in 2007, and started as a manager here and moved into a multiple positions, as many do in the credit union industry. Many hats leads you to many positions, and
Mm.
that led me to the path of working here for almost the last 16 years and where I'm at today. So it's been an ever-changing field and an educational roller coaster for me, but it led me to where I
Mhm.
am.
Yeah. And obviously, you've had a large portion of your time that you've been able to lead in that credit union space and really, help serve in that way. But it sounds like obviously, having that background, in the restaurant industry and really service really paved the way for kind of your approach. Would you say that that's kind of, does that ever kind of like come to mind for you or something that you think
Yeah,
about?
it does. I guess holding out as long as I could in the restaurant industry and also getting frustrated in the restaurant industry led me to making some changes in my life. I think if
Yeah.
I had enjoyed that and didn't see long-term frustration with it, I may have stayed at it. But
Hmm.
knowing that it did led me to get some education to go back and see what else was out there. And to be honest, when I went to go get my master's, I had zero plans on what I was going to do with it after. It was just something I thought would lead me down a different path, and it certainly did. Just wasn't expecting it to come while I was getting my MBA. So that's how that worked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. For the listeners, and again, I have a little bit of background knowledge because of our experiences together, but you don't just wear one hat. You do wear a lot of hats, not only at there at Service First, but also just in the credit union movement in general with Filene and with CUNA Management School and just all these different areas in the ways that you serve. Can you kind of walk through some of your experiences that way or what you're currently doing so folks can get to know you a little bit better?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned I started at the credit union in 2007, but it wasn't just starting here and working here. As many folks do in the credit union industry, they're given opportunity to grow and to gain more knowledge, and that makes them more valuable. And plus, it gives you more experience in the industry and getting to know other folks. So I took advantage of those as much as I was given the opportunity to. And credit unions, as everyone knows, gives you the opportunity to do that. In the banking industry, it was more get the job done, move to the next project or move to the next branch or whatever it is. Here at the credit union, it was, grow yourself the way you want to grow and the opportunity is yours if you decide to pursue it. So that is literally what I did. I went through community management school with you, Michael. So that's where Michael and I met back in 2015.
Was that 2017? Yeah.
Yeah, 2015 to 2017. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yep. 3 years, and we're counting the year we started, not so everyone thinks my math isn't that bad.
Right.
But
Right.
2015 to
Yes. Yeah.
2017. Yep. And then at the same time, I did the filing I-3 program, and at the very tail end of all of that, went through the Credit Union Foundation's DE program, Development Educator program.
Mm.
So all of those opportunities led me to really grow myself in areas I wanted to and meet, gosh, I can't even tell you how many great people during that time. Prior to that, just going to different conferences also led me down a path to know I want to educate myself and grow even more.
Hmm. That's awesome.
Yep. So I think that has all based on education and opportunity to grow yourself.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and one of the big reasons I wanted to make sure that you got to be on this podcast, and thank you for jumping on here, is
Yeah.
because you have so much experience and you have all these great connections, like you touched on. And so, Chris, I'm curious, as you've kind of moved forward throughout your own leadership journey, and then getting to work with some incredible leaders as well through all these different avenues that you mentioned. What are one or two of the things that if you looked backwards and you're like, gosh, I wish I would have known this, or maybe a better question would be, I wish I would have implemented this sooner to help me be successful in the work that I do.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone could look back and say, I wish I knew then what I knew now.
Hmm.
Um, I wish I knew the people now. I'm sorry. I wish I knew the people that I know now back then.
Mm.
Not knowing what was available in credit union space or in the environment available to us, I think was something I missed out on early on. Um, when you start somewhere, people throw a ton of information at you. And as you continue to grow, people throw, no matter what position you're in a credit union, people throw a ton of information at you. I really wish I knew some of the folks I knew today back then who would have guided me in a direction or a path I would have wanted to go. So I
Mm.
think I wish I knew that then. If I was going to make any changes in my life, looking back, I'm not sure I would. I think everything
Hmm.
happened for a reason,
Hmm.
and it just led me down the path where I was continued to grow.
Yeah.
I hope I answered all your questions. I think I missed one out of
No,
those.
no, you're good. I know I threw a lot at you there on that one, but yeah. So what would you say, from your own sense, of what you're focused on as a leader, and then also connecting with all these other great leaders? What do you feel like are one or two of the things that are the most pressing, or are some of the biggest issues that you feel like leaders are facing right now that need the most attention?
I think I'll pick two. I think one of them is the work from home environment or hybrid environment. I think keeping teams engaged that work in multiple locations is has been a challenge over the years. I think we've gotten much better at it, not just here at Service First, but at every credit union and every industry in the world that has hybrid workers has gotten better at it, and they really had no choice thanks to the pandemic. So that
Hmm.
led us down that path. But I really think that there's still some challenges out there. There's good talent around the country and around the world, but sometimes we're only focused on what's available in our area and right in front of us. And I
Hmm.
think the way the world has changed, allowing remote and hybrid workers, we have to consider that, the next best talent might not be 5 miles down the road. It might be 50 or 150 miles down the road or even farther. So I think that's a challenge is growing in that hybrid area and capturing the great talent. But the second thing, I think that is a challenge is collaboration. Credit unions are great at it. They get together and they collaborate on a lot of things. But I think industries in general and business in general, they don't collaborate as much as credit unions do, and that's a challenge, especially when you have businesses or small businesses wanting to get ahead of other businesses. And I think that's if we just band together as small businesses or as credit unions, we would have a better shot of surviving. And that was what was needed during COVID. And a lot of those that did, that combined like restaurant with pickup in parking lots and so forth, those that changed and were flexible and adaptable, and collaborated with others, not just kept their own business to themselves, survived. And the
Hmm.
ones that maybe were just focused on themselves and only themselves and weren't flexible and adaptable did not. So I think collaboration in general is another challenge that we're
Yeah.
faced with.
Yeah, no, definitely. You to pick two big hot buttons I feel like right now, and I want to dive more into collaboration because I know you're really good at that and help facilitating that with groups and organizations. But when you talk about the hybrid model and you talk about the work from home or
Yeah.
completely remote, what are some of the things that you guys have seen that have worked for you, during you just with your role as Service First, but then also with these other credit unions, with other industries across the country? What you'd mentioned the challenges. What are maybe one or
Mhm.
two things that you've been like, man, this is something that really helps make a positive difference when it comes to connecting with these teams remotely?
Yeah, I think open communication with them has been a way of maybe banding them together, the hybrid teams together. Zoom certainly helped, right? Like that boomed out of
Mhm.
almost nowhere thanks to the pandemic. But keeping
Right.
engaged virtually and semi-physically by seeing one another via video or Zoom, I think really helped those virtual teams. It made you feel like a part of something whole, even though you might have been miles away, remote. I think another thing that really helped, not just the communication and being open and honest with them, but making them feel part of a team. We did fun events. So we normally do them when we're on site, and that's super easy to do. Holiday parties, fun days, dress down, dress up days, lunch days, whatever it can be, but we make fun activities out of them. Remotely, that was really a challenge. We did mock game shows while our lobbies were closed. So we would pick a time of day and do a mock game show with the first contestants that were able to join. We did after hours happy hour right after work, maybe 5 o'clock. Don't tell anyone. Maybe 4:30. Who knows what time it was? But I think
That's still
after work,
technically happy hour, right? I
it's still
think,
happy
depending
hour,
on,
right?
yeah, yeah.
We would have a 5 o'clock happy hour after work for some of the virtual workers, so that way they got to see one another. Not all of our folks are home, of course, so that was a way to ban just the at-home workers or virtual at the time.
Hmm.
And then some of the other ways of doing it is we still celebrated those fun days for those in person as well as at home. So we would make gift boxes or gift bags or sunshine boxes, if you want to call them that, for the at home folks. And maybe still play on those fun days, but send those boxes or deliver those boxes to their houses. That way they
Hmm.
can participate in them as much as the in office workers could. So it was really trying to find that happy medium of encouraging the hybrid workers to be part of the in branch or in office team, and vice versa, the in office team to be part of the hybrid workers. But what I
Hmm.
will really say when it comes down to needing help or reaching out to someone, I don't think now when a branch reaches out and they get me here at the office, they get any different service or different response as if I was at home. They don't care. They don't know
Hmm.
where I'm at half the time if I'm at home or in the office. That's not one of the questions you first ask when they say, I have a problem, can you help me? So I think that getting over ourselves might have been it.
Hmm.
Like, are we home
Hmm.
or at the office? It doesn't matter. You're still performing the same job. It's just a matter
Right.
of, are you doing it from the comfort of your home or are you doing it from the comfort of your office or cubicle at work?
Right. Yeah, which can kind of be a struggle or a challenge too, right? Is, leaders, especially, busy executives like yourself who have these demands on your time. Did you kind of have to find obviously a new normal for your schedule? But are there some things that really helped you maintain some of that balance? Because I think it's really easy to allow, if you're working from home or kind of have this hybrid piece, just to be like, okay, I'm at work for a while and then now I'm at home, or just
Yep.
extended stay at home, and being able to shut it off. What kind of helped you or worked for you?
Yeah, well, I haven't heard the word new normal in about 5 minutes, so I'm glad you brought that up. But I think personally, and I'll just talk about myself for a second before we talk from the leader side. It was, because when are you at work and when you're at home, right? Like when you walk up to that computer room or office you have at home and walk into that room, you're suddenly at work, but as soon as you walk away from it, you're suddenly at home. Like where do you draw that line? And I'll be
Right.
honest, for the first couple of months, maybe year, because we weren't really planning on it lasting that long, that got skewed for many people, and it got to be very challenging where people weren't sure, were you at home or were you at work, because there was no line drawn. 8 to 5 became 7 to 6, maybe became 7 to 7, maybe became all hours of the night because it was so simple to walk into wherever your laptop, computer, or whatever you were using at home and just log in the middle of the day or the middle of the night and do something. So for me, it was, setting a schedule. I know that sounds crazy because I am never on time for anything, and I think everyone who's listening will probably agree to that, and you will as well. So. Um, it was tough because if you set a schedule, I'm not one that likes to stay in the box and think of a schedule
Mm,
as I have to start this time and have to end this time. Usually, when I'm done with whatever I'm doing, that's the time I end. If it takes longer, great. If it's earlier, well, I'll find something else to do to fill my time.
mm,
Uh,
mhm.
but I think having some routine what was needed. Otherwise, you get up in the morning, you drive to work, you walk into the office. That was your routine. When you left the office, you left work. That was your routine.
Mm,
So
mhm.
at home, personally, I had to make it a point to remember this was my routine. Whenever I started this, that was when my day started. Whenever I finished it, that's when my day started. Mine was walking the dog that I got during COVID. So my COVID dog, I rescued her during COVID, and she's just amazing. But my start and end to my day was taking the dog for a walk. So my morning walk in the morning with her, come home, and then my day would start. So that was my key to start my day. And then at the end of the day was taking her out for like the late evening or early evening walk, and then that would be the end of my day. So no matter what time of day that was like my trigger to know when to start and end my day.
Mm,
As a leader, you have to lead that too and make sure your folks know that they have a start and an end time to their day. Otherwise, they get burnt out very quickly. And
right.
I know our in-branch staff was in-branch and in-office staff was getting burnt out, but so were the at-home folks because they didn't have that divide. Work family got skewed between work, 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 and no family, and then it got skewed maybe in the other direction. You tell them to concentrate on their family, it's family, 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 no work. So you had to
Right.
find that happy medium. And I think the way to do it was to make sure that everyone was okay and make sure they had time to spend with their family. Some of the
Mhm.
stuff that we did here at the credit union, not all the time and not with everyone, but those folks that did work from home, that we had maybe a lunch day at work, we would make sure they got to participate and maybe include their family one day because their family is going through the same experience they are at home. Good or bad, their family's going along with them for that work from home experience, especially when schools were virtual. So we tried to band those folks together to have dinner on us at home every now and then, so that way they live as a family, and we want them to be happy as a family, and separate that from work. But as a
Mm,
leader, we had to make sure that our folks had those same boundaries like we did, and we didn't take advantage of
mm,
it. Like 8 o'clock at night, I'm not calling, Barb on my end, be like, hey, listen, I have a problem, but it's 8 o'clock at night. But I'm still working,
mhm.
you're not. So we had to make sure that
Right.
those boundaries weren't crossed as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So jumping back into the collaboration piece, which I think is
Yeah.
really important, you touched on something to say, hey, really you feel like, and I would agree with you, that the credit union movement, by and large, it's people helping people, and it's really kind of this cooperative model, and so
Mhm.
there's by design a little bit more cooperation than maybe other industries, other areas. What are some of the key pieces that you think that credit unions do really well when it comes to collaboration? And then just even through the work that you've done, what do you feel like some businesses could do, credit union or not,
Mhm.
that could really help them to, not only help find more resources for themselves, but also be able to, extend more and give more if they're at a place where they can do that.
Yeah, so I'm hoping this is going to be an easy answer, but it might not be.
Okay.
I think the philosophy of people helping people that has been spread around the credit unions forever, that's what makes collaboration so easy. Like, I want to do something, even if I call a neighbor down the street that's a credit union and ask for help, they're willing to collaborate with us. But I can call a credit union 100 miles, 1,000 miles away, and they're also willing to collaborate with us. Some more than others because they're not in a territory we're in or something like that. But no one's really afraid that we're going after the same members. We're all providing a service, and we're all treating different members or serving different members in a way that they should be served. So we all have a different field of membership in one way or another.
Mm.
Not all of us, but a lot of us do. I think that that philosophy of people helping people really works with credit unions, and that makes collaboration so easy. For other businesses that aren't credit unions, and I hate to say this because I said it before, but they just need to get over themselves, right? Like, competition's competition, but sometimes there's healthy competition. If we
Mm.
could band together in just a few areas, I think that it would be a easy way to collaborate and grow both our businesses. And there has to be ways of doing that. For instance, ooh, and I can't think of a great example, but I'm going to go back to the pandemic for a second. Um, and just look at Grubhub and Uber. I think that and I could be wrong with this, but I don't think Grubhub and Uber Eats were as viable prior to the pandemic. And I could be 100% wrong with that, and I'm just making up as I go at this point. But I would say that that was a winner for Grubhub and Uber Eats and anything else that delivered food and groceries to your house. Most of that didn't exist. Maybe Instacart
Hmm.
did, but most of it didn't exist prior to the pandemic. If we can just grab two small businesses that complement one another and come up with a new product or service that people want, that's a winner for small businesses. Credit unions do that very well. By another credit union has a product or service that we want to offer, or it might be in the digital space, which is more common today with fintechs. We could band together and possibly offer that. Sometimes we can't offer it on our own. I think small businesses can take that notion and do the same exact thing. Try to find a partner that you can do something with and create a new service for your customers or clients or members. And I think that if we can do that consistently, both businesses will thrive. And I'm just
Mm.
picking Grubhub and Uber Eats because they're on my mind, and yeah, I use them every now and then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that is a winner. And prior to COVID, I'm not sure I ever had groceries or Walmart delivered to my house before. And because of COVID, I'm not sure I would give it up
Mm.
because it is so simple. And if it's something that I want to do and go do something else with my life, it's easy. I don't have to spend all that time in a grocery store or a Walmart picking the right apple or watermelon, right? You order it, someone's picking it for you. And I know that some people will not want that to happen, but we've just created a new business by combining two good small business ideas together.
Mm. Hmm.
So I think they can learn
Yeah.
from that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's so many benefits, like you mentioned, to both businesses or any
Yeah.
partnership that comes into play. And I do think there's barriers there sometimes of, gosh, this is my competition. But I also think sometimes it's, oh, I'm at this standard or I have this level of service or whatever it might be.
Yep.
And then realizing, hey, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You can start a partnership or start collaboration with one project with, one thing to really help, kind
Yep.
of test the waters a little bit and then go from there and be like, okay, let's do more together. So I totally agree with you. And I think we're stronger together, especially in these times. And it doesn't have to be just local. I mean, I think that's great too, to combine forces with local
Mhm.
businesses where there's synergy there. But it can be, to your point, a business, across the country.
Yep.
And so much help can come from that as well. So yeah, definitely agree with that. That's great. Talk to me a little bit about. I know we were talking offline about change because it feels like in every organization right now, there's so much change. And I know in the credit union industry, there's mergers and there's changes that happen with leadership, but there's also changes that happen in every business. And the word pivot has come up quite a bit of businesses and credit unions needing to pivot and change, whether that's a direction towards digital, whether that's some of the succession planning. What are some of the things that you focused on or do to not only foster that change, but also to help your team move forward and sort of embrace that change as well?
Yeah. Well, to be open and honest with you, we're challenged with change as everyone is, but we're also open to it, which is half the battle, is being open to change. And there was this book, it's a very small book, and I wish I knew the author and I can't off the top of my head. It was Change is Good, You Go First. So I read that in two different ways. Is first of all, if you make the change, everyone else will follow you and make the change. Or it could mean if you're not willing to make the change on your own, no one else is going to be either. So if you don't do it,
Mm-hmm.
no one else will. So we can sit here and talk about change all we want, but if we as leaders won't do it ourselves, it's not going to matter how much we put on paper. It's physically the action that brings about the change. So I think some of the things that we have done was number one, being open to change. If we weren't open to it to begin with, it would never happen. But that certainly doesn't mean that we're experts at change here at the credit union or here in my life, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there are some things I say I want to do as change, and it sounds great on my to-do list, but it keeps on getting moved down that list because it's not as important. It might be immediate but not important, or vice versa. It might be important but yet not immediate. So I really think that being open to change is one, but taking that leap. Fail fast and fail forward. I like to say that a lot when it comes to innovation. I heard it from the Filing Institute first, and it always stuck in my mind. Can't remember exactly where we're at when I heard it with that group, but I remember hearing it, and it sticks with me because I think that um, we're afraid to fail. Like just as natural human beings and consumers, we don't want to fail. We want everything to be on the up and up and everything to be good, both in business
Yeah.
and as a person. But if you're willing to take that leap, knowing that there might be some failure, you do move yourself forward. You know what didn't work, so now you know what might work. It's like two steps forward, one step back. At least you moved forward a little bit. And I think that as an organization, we are willing to take those chances. Are we perfect at it? Are we open 100% of the time? No. I mean, nobody is because there's that offset of risk that people need to do and need to look at. But I
Yeah.
think that would be the second thing is, fail fast, fail forward. Be open that it might not work, but that has to do with change. It does move you
Mm-hmm.
forward. And I think the third thing about change is just communicating what you want to happen. So I might have this grandiose outcome of what I want to happen from a change, but don't tell anyone about it. Instead, I just have this implementation of change and no one can see the vision. So I think that third thing that we do really well is sharing that vision. So, and then we have to share the road to get to that vision. So I kind of think I'm a very visual person. So if I was presenting right now, it would be like maybe a road with a sign at the very end, if you could see it, and think that there's a way to get there. Here's what the sign looks like, and it's beautiful, but I'm not going to tell you what road to travel down. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that the picture I'd present would be this road that is very narrowed, so you have the path to get there, and the vision is what's at the end of that road. So I
Mm-hmm.
just think that we need to communicate that with people so they can see the same vision we can. That is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes one of the stoppers to change. It's not that it's a bad idea. It's not that the outcome at the end is is a bad outcome. It's just that maybe they can't put those two items together, the path and the outcome. So I think
Mm-hmm.
sharing that vision and then sharing the way to get to that vision is needed as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems like there's a lot of similarities there between change and obviously innovation, which, kind of go hand in hand. Do you find that a lot of those stoppers or a lot of those barriers are in place when you're trying to drive innovation and trying to move that forward?
Oh, absolutely. There's barriers everywhere when it comes up to that. And I think, well, this is all industries, but I'll start just by talking about the credit union industry is, we pay a good amount of money for services we use through third parties, through merchants, through vendors. and sometimes we're stuck in their box. We might have the best idea, but we're stuck within their box. So we go out and find another vendor that can do this thing we're thinking about and then tack it onto the original box. And then it becomes this house of cards, right? Where it may or may not stand up for long, and it may be just a good addition, but maybe that original vendor that was stuck in that box adds another item or another service that you were looking for that you added another vendor for. So
Mm.
there's always those stumbling blocks, and I think no matter what way we turn, there's going to be some risks associated with what direction we go, but there's always going to be those roadblocks. We're challenged with them all the time because we want to go somewhere and maybe our vendor sticks in the box. But I will say for other businesses out there, not just credit unions who might not be using vendors, I think you're challenged with roadblocks of people not wanting to change. Again, I know that goes back to that change a couple seconds ago, but sometimes people are your roadblock as well. It's not just your
Mm.
vendors. It's people, it's your vendors, and sometimes it's constraint of your resources, meaning people and money. You might not be able to do something new because you're constrained by some of those resources.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. So when you're talking about implementing strategy and you're talking about moving innovation forward, we focused a decent amount on that vendor side or the technology
Mhm.
side. But let's talk about the people side a little bit. How
Yep.
do you help them embrace some of that change? And you touched on communication. Are there things that you've seen that have worked really well from your own experience or in talking to other leaders that have really helped folks embrace that change and innovation and the strategies that you really need to move forward?
Yeah. So one of the things we've done, and I think that works really well with other credit unions and companies, is being transparent. So I know we talked about communication, so I won't dwell on it, but the transparency of everything that goes with it. So we share our strategic plan across all of our management team. And what I mean by that is even our managers that work in branches, our management team that head up different areas of the credit union, as well as our leadership team. So all levels of management see our strategic plan from top to bottom, and they contribute to it. So that transparency of what we're doing and where our strategic goals are is important. But they get to create additional goals on top of those to get to them. So we give them the vision and they help develop the path. So people being part of the solution really helps us get to that strategic planning piece.
Yeah.
I think the other side of it that really works well, not just for credit unions, and not just communication or having transparency, is action. And I know I just said this a minute ago as well when we talk about action, but it's the willingness to do something, not just sit in a room or an office and put together a great plan, but the willing to do the plan, take the actions needed, and maybe pivot. I know that's a word that you just mentioned gets used too much now, but literally to make that pivot if something's not going well, to change your plan. Like just
Mm.
because you have a plan, I think the pandemic told us that things can happen that force you to change. And if you don't change, you won't be here. So
Right.
I think that maybe this all comes together that if we're not flexible and adaptable, period, it doesn't matter how good our strategic plan is on paper or how good our planning is. It's the
Mhm.
willingness to take action when something happens.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. As you were talking about it, kind of reminded me of, if you use a certain muscle, right, and you are able to kind of exercise it, then when it comes time to use it to be able to need it, then you're like, okay, I've done the work, and I know, kind of what this looks like. Or you mentioned, walking your dog. It's like, okay, well now if I need to go out for a walk somewhere, like I've been doing that consistently, so now
Mhm.
I can make that happen. It seems like with change, that's what I see as well, is if we're kind of stuck in our ways or we're not, we don't have that flexibility, then when something bigger comes, it becomes really even a bigger challenge, not just the actual change itself, but being open to doing something different, all right, or being open to kind of a new way of navigating it. It seems like it's good to flex that muscle, I guess,
Yeah,
consistently. Yeah.
absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think having the right people on the bus is needed as well because we're talking about people. Um, Sometimes you don't have the right people on the bus and you have to take them along for the ride anyway. It's a fun bus ride, But
Mm.
when push comes to shove, everyone on that bus has to be a contributor. So it's whether, and I'm not saying to let that person off the bus, right? Like there's always rest stops, give them a break, but that's not where you want to push them off the bus. Sometimes it is just bringing that person to the right seat on the bus. I mean, there's sometimes we'll say we're getting rid of this person, they're not the right person for us. But it could just be they're not in the right seat on the bus. Like maybe that they're not, and I'm just using this as an example, but maybe they're in IT, but they're not a great IT person. So we're just like, oh, that's it. We're gonna get rid of them. Maybe their focus is in IT. Maybe they're data driven and they're not meant to be a programmer. But
Mm.
they're on the bus. They're the right person to be on the bus. They're just not in the right seat. So I think as credit unions and small businesses alike need to just make sure that the people that are on that bus are in the right seat on that bus. And they may have to move around seats because we all wear different hats. But when push comes to shove, is that the person you want in the right seat on the right bus?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's key because if you're going to move forward, obviously you need to know if
Hmm.
that's the right person for that time or for the change. But
Hmm.
just in general, it is really easy just to kind of turn and burn. And I think that was probably more so the case even 5 years ago. And now with all the changes and really a lack of workforce, a lack
Hmm.
of people to be able to fill those roles, it's kind of forced us to slow down a little bit and say, well, can this person do something else within the organization? Can I work with them in a different way? Can we have a different approach, if I'm hearing you right, to really
Yeah,
help them move
you
forward?
are. And let's
So
reverse roles for a second. Let me ask you a question. I know this is not typically the way this would work, but so you've been doing this for a while, going out and consulting, basically on the human factors of industry. So let me ask you about not only having the right person in the bus, but having people that are willing and want to work, that are available to work and maybe in the job. Are you seeing that happen a lot in different areas that you consult in? That there are folks that are not in the workforce that would be perfect for a business, and why aren't they in the workforce?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of that perfect storm where you had the pandemic, you had, and there's still this case, especially with the economy being where it's at,
Mhm.
where a lot of women have actually left the workforce to focus on childcare needs because that's really
Mhm.
expensive, and there's not great solutions for that. So you had that happen. You've had a big focus of, depending on what area you're in, a lot of men and women not going into trades or going into some service sectors, kind of saying, well, I want to be at this very high level job or high paying job, even though I'm just entering the workforce. And then, probably one of the biggest factors is so many folks who are baby boomers, transitioning out of the workforce. A lot of them left a lot earlier than they were even scheduled to. Some of them are coming back again based
Mhm.
off of financial need, but a lot of them decided, hey, I was going to retire anyway. I'm kind of done with this whole work thing and the pandemic on top of it. I'm out. So you have all of those things that kind of, we were already heading towards this shortage of talented people to help fill these roles, but all those things really factored in together,
Yep.
and then what it's done is created in some ways some good leverage for employees, for workers to say, hey, I really want to love the work that I'm doing, be paid really well, be in a good environment, and so there has been a bit of a shift,
Mhm.
and for employers, it's really been a challenge of
Mhm.
not only how do I build a really strong culture, but how do I have enough people to grow? And I think it's helped shift a lot of mindsets to a positive one of, man, I've got to provide a really great culture and great benefits and invest
Yep.
in people, not only for people to stay, but for me to attract
Mhm.
even other people who might be in a different industry, or allow some of the folks to work in some of these sectors that maybe we've overlooked in the past.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's
Sounds
a
like
lot happening in those areas for sure.
sure. Sounds like a
Yeah.
War for Talent episode that we should. schedule for you.
It is. It's a huge war for talent. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because obviously all of it ties together. But as I was talking about that, and as we've been talking, I'm curious for you, Chris, because you wear all these hats within your organization. You're helping drive strategy. You're helping drive change and innovation. But again, you're also this leader in the credit union movement and industry. And so I know that you have these conversations with other busy executives who are high performing, who are doing these great things. What are some of the things that you're hearing when it comes to managing people, when it comes to getting great folks, or just really looking ahead into wanting to grow, and some of the strategies that you guys are trying to put in place to help address it.
Yeah, I think the thing you hear is challenges. Like there's all these leaders are challenged. It may look like we all know what we're doing and we all have the best ideas in sliced bread, putting them forward for our folks, but I think we all have challenges and similar challenges, but we all have different answers to them as well. And I think the people that I talk to often outside of Service First have challenges, have similar challenges, and they're people challenges, whether not having enough people, or if they have enough people, are they just filling some spaces with people to temporarily run a branch or run a lobby, or run a whatever. Um, and I think it's always that when you need to hire someone, or you decide to hire more staff, is finding the right applicant. We could have jobs out there for months and months to find the right person, because we don't just hire just to hire. We want to hire the right person that fits our culture and will be the best fit for the job. And I think that that has been a challenge among many leaders, not just here in our area, but across the country, for folks I talk to and keep engaged with. It's a challenge to find not applicants, but to find good applicants that fit your culture and are right for the job. So that job
Mm.
fit and person fit doesn't always match up. Culture, person, and job fit doesn't always match up. I think some other challenges I've heard is this challenge of finding the right people for the job in your local area. So I think we talked earlier on about having hybrid staff. And I think one of the challenges we have, well, so I'm just going to take a step back, but Google and Microsoft laid off people, what, last week, early last week, I
Hmm.
believe. So
Right.
there is a lot of talent out there,
Mm.
but they are outside of our area where we normally hire. So I think some of the challenges we hear is there's good people out there applying, but we want them to be hybrid, in one day, home the next three, and then in the next day. So 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever it is, we want them to be hybrid, not just work from home. And I think that hurts us. I really think that as an industry, because we're not willing to be as flexible as some of these folks need to be that just worked for a big fintech company, and credit unions and other businesses alike are getting into that digital space. They need some of that talent that Microsoft or Google just laid off, but they're not in our normal footprint to hire.
Hmm.
So that's a challenge. There's the talent, but we can't reach it. It's like reaching for a banana on a tree on a desert island. It's there, but I can't reach it. So I'm just gonna die down here. What do you want me to do?
I'm right.
I can see it.
Seriously.
I know it's there, but I just can't.
Mm.
I can't get it. And I think uh, a lot of us are challenged with that as well. We are willing to hire work from home or hybrid staff, but not 100%. So by
Mm.
doing that, it might cut off some really good talent that's available to us.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's a challenge for us as well as some others.
Yeah. And if I hear you right, really, it's saying, hey, there are opportunities to hire people. We need to be more flexible as an employer, to be able to be able to scoop up some great folks without maybe
Yep.
the traditional, hey, they need to be living in this area, or they need to come in a certain time, per week, or just really being able to pivot a little bit and be able to change the
There's that word
normal
again.
paradigm, because it's this person is going to bring so much value to our organization. It's worth it, right? I can bring on a
Yep.
developer who was at Google for 10 years. It's worth it to do that, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And we're not the only ones challenged with it. It's not just credit unions. It's not just the banking industry. It's other uh, I think other industries as well. I'm not going to pick
Mm.
on the small businesses as much because they might need local folks to run a business, But those
Right.
businesses that might have a tech aspect to it, think of Amazon for a second. But if there was a mom and pop's retail store and they wanted to start distribution like an Amazon, but on a smaller scale, but didn't have the tech background in order to do that, or didn't have the logistics background to possibly do that, but have the money and resources to do it on that end, that might be the talent you need that's out there. You might have
Right.
everything you need to do it, you just don't have the talent to construct it. And I think
Mm.
that, not so much the small businesses, but I think those medium-sized businesses that need that talent could definitely can definitely use it. But I think that goes to even in our area when a place closes or lays off folks, there's talent to be had. And I think we
Mm.
just need to be flexible to gain that talent.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of challenges, like you mentioned, and it seems like with those challenges, there's opportunities there too,
Hmm.
depending on our flexibility, depending on how we want to
Yep.
approach it, or even trying something instead of saying, well, this is how it's always been. If I hear you right, it's kind of looking at it through that lens of innovation. Could we be able to acquire, some great talent, some great people to help us move forward? It just isn't going to look like it kind of always has, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess
Yeah.
that focuses back to how do you keep that talent engaged because they're not on site. So I think it's full circle, right?
Right.
So you might have that hybrid workforce or work from home workforce, but then the question comes up, well, they're across the country. How are we going to keep, Mary engaged when she's in California and we're in Pennsylvania?
Mm.
Wonderful question. That is a question for leadership to be able to keep them engaged. And that is something we need to focus on in order to make that grow, if we were to go that route.
Right, right. No,
Yep.
and to your point, I think that's a big hot button for really any leader is, hey, how engaged is our team? Some
Hmm.
of the work that I get to do is develop like an engagement survey to say, well,
Hmm.
what are some of the specific areas that people are telling us, in a blind survey that they're really engaged in, and what are some of the areas that they're not? Because I think you have to have some sort of measurement tool, or way of referencing that, and then obviously, like you mentioned earlier, really making it engaging, even if somebody isn't physically present. Hey, is that happy hours? Is that some of
Hmm.
these special occasions? And bringing people into that culture in that environment, whether they're far away or right there
Yep.
at home office. So, Chris, I so appreciate your time. I guess my last question for you is, what are maybe one message that you have for a leader who is feeling a little bit overwhelmed? Maybe they're feeling like, man, the last couple of years have been kind of a struggle. They might have a little bit of that burnout. What's some maybe a word of encouragement that you can share with a busy executive to help them continue moving forward as we enter the new year?
Yeah, so I would maybe give two pieces of advice. The first one is don't be afraid to take a break. Take a step back, take some you time. We have a lot of extroverts that need that introvert piece. So introverted extrovert, I think is the
Mm.
proper term.
Hmm.
Don't be afraid to take that time to yourself. You put yourself on show for so long that maybe there is that time frame where you just need to sit down, self-reflect, go through those steps of maybe even self-pampering to get you through to really self-reflect on what you want out of life and what's happening at work before you dive back in. So definitely take the time to take the step back. The second thing I would say is don't be afraid, whether it be don't be afraid to go out and get education if you want to grow yourself, and it doesn't have to be schooling. There's many certifications and trades out there. Don't be afraid to meet people. Don't be afraid to fail. And most of all, don't be afraid to be yourself, right? So
Mm.
I think that those two things together with, one, don't be afraid, period, and two, take time for yourself are two things that I can use as well as many other people can use.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Chris Court, Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer at Service First Credit Union. Chris, thank you so much for taking
Sure,
time
thank you.
today, connecting with us and sharing your insights as well. I definitely appreciate it.